All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the official Paris Blockchain Week podcast. Today's guest, Robby Yung, CEO of Animoca Brands. Quick introduction on Robby. He's the CEO of Animoca, a pioneer of digital property rights in gaming and Web3. Robby's resume spans multiple IPOs, decades of media and gaming leadership, and deep involvement in building the open metaverse. He's also a relentless athlete and lifelong learner, still thriving to be a better human. Robby, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wow, I think I should hire you to be my hype man.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. So, Robby, you've had such a dynamic career across gaming, media, and now Web3. What's been the driving force behind your journey, and what brought you to Animoca Brands?
That's a very nice way of saying you're a little bit old. So what brought me to Animoca Brands? Actually, it was friendship. So I spent most of my life living in Asia, Hong Kong, I guess more than anywhere else. And I was part of a small community of founders in Hong Kong in the Web 1 days back in the 90s.
Wow.
And we didn't have, the startup community was very small. Literally, there was like 25 of us, I think, at the beginning who got together, and we had a group, and we would get together every couple of weeks and, try to help each other out. We'd share contacts of venture capital investors or angel investors. We'd try to partner with each other and just get people interested in the internet.
Yeah.
So it was at one of those events that I met a guy named Yat Siu.
Oh, wow.
And we became friends because we were part of this community of, and we had our first startups at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like going to school together, I guess, at that point. And so, long story short, what would this be, 15 years later, after I'd sold a couple of other businesses and Yat had sold a couple of businesses, we got together at Animoca Brands because he had just started it a couple of years before and was interested to have somebody help him to grow the business, and so that's when I joined. So it was through friendship, actually, more than anything else.
I love that story. I love that. So Animoca Brands has become the leader when it comes to digital property rights and the open metaverse. For those new to the space, what is the mission of Animoca Brands, and why is it so important right now?
Okay, so I think we've been talking about this, since we discovered blockchain. For us, with our roots as a game company originally, before we discovered blockchain, we made casual mobile games. And so I think for us, discovering blockchain was kind of a landmark experience because we realized that for the first time, players had been spending money in our games, buying stuff, buying digital items, but actually all that stuff we were selling them, they didn't really own because they didn't have any property rights. They couldn't possess and own and trade and do whatever they wanted with that stuff because it wasn't real.
Yeah.
They were actually just renting it from us in those games.
Yeah.
And so blockchain was a tool that essentially gave us the ability to fulfill that promise to our players.
Yeah.
And we're like, that's really cool. And so that was kind of our gateway drug to blockchain, if you will.
Yeah.
And then once we realized that it would be perfect for gamers, we realized, actually, it's perfect for a lot of things. And this is when we broadened our approach beyond just gaming to think about what is it that enabling digital asset ownership in the world will, what are the ramifications of that? And so, long story short, we've ended up now in institutional finance. We've ended up in all kinds of adjacent industries because they have this common vision of digital property rights.
I love that. I love that. So with over 540 investments and a presence across so many iconic IPs and platforms, what's the glue that ties Animoca universe together?
The glue. So I think the glue is that shared philosophy of digital ownership, but also it's a very simple idea, which is that we think a lot about network effects. Network effects are at the heart of, I think, everything that has been successful about the internet and anything on the internet. Mm-hmm. It's about this ability to have disproportionate value with each increment. It's Moore's law, right? It's there will be more value to the network with each additional participant in the network. And actually there's more value than just one extra, right? Because everybody in the network benefits, not just the new guy. And so what we found is that tokenization, we think tokens are actually the distillation of network effects, because when you own a token, you actually own a piece of the network. So you own some of those network effects. And that's really interesting because the ownership of tokens can give you a digital asset. It can give you, rights. So in some cases, you can have rights to vote on a DAO or have governance or other capabilities all through this token ownership. And that is basically allowing you to have those network effects. Now, this resonates with us because we came from an environment in Web 2 where we were denied those. So if you have a Facebook account, you're contributing to Facebook every day with content and everything, but you don't own any of those network effects. They keep those for themselves, and we think that's not fair.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So let's get into the meat and potatoes here of the interview. Digital property, gaming, and Web3 infrastructure. From gaming ownership, how did the vision for digital property rights evolve at Animoca, and what role does gaming play in making that vision real for users?
Okay, so I think digital property rights has evolved a little bit in how I mentioned before, because it evolved from our perspective, going from just gaming to the wider lens of all of society, frankly. But I think that the reason we focus on gaming a lot is not just because of our roots as a game company, but because we think that new technologies are often adopted in the mass consumer market through entertainment, because it's entertainment that everybody wants a better way to do their banking, but you don't seek new banking services, right? You just want it to work better. But you will buy a smartphone not to make phone calls, but because it's got a cool game, and you need a faster processor because you like to play different games, right? Or a bigger screen or what have you. So that purchasing decision is being driven by your entertainment demand. And we've seen this with platform after platform. Everything from television sets to game consoles to, now smartphones. And so we think entertainment will drive blockchain adoption. And the biggest piece of the entertainment pie is gaming.
I love that. So what are some of the most exciting real-world use cases for blockchain-based ownership that you're seeing across your portfolio?
Real-world use cases. So I think real-world use cases are fascinating because I think they're the things that resonate most with people when you might otherwise struggle to, explain technology to them because they're not too into technology, not the way we are at least. So I think there's a few. Obviously, stablecoins, we don't even need to talk about stablecoins. Like, that's done, it's dusted, that's product market fit. Outside of stable, and also I should remind that stablecoins, particularly in emerging markets, have a very, very key role to play because they're actually used as, daily mediums of exchange. I think other things that I find really fascinating, I've seen great examples of what we call decentralized physical infrastructure projects, or DePIN, where people are starting to use blockchain technology to assemble networks. So for example, it started in the early days with networks of computing power. You have idle processing power in your computer, you join a network, and you can essentially sell your processing power to the network. Now, the same thing is happening now with things like infrastructure for electricity. So, if you have an electric car, you can put your charging and your electricity back into the grid if you're generating electricity. But once you tokenize that, then it becomes fungible because you can move that value around easily. And that's really important. So I think what we're going to see is a real explosion of the sharing economy, moving to having blockchain infrastructure because it actually facilitates that sharing in a much more efficient way.
Wow, I love that. Let's talk about open metaverse momentum. Open metaverse is a term that gets used a lot, but really, what does it mean to you and the Animoca team?
So I think that the idea behind the open metaverse is essentially that we're building an interconnected online world, right? We're all building our own applications. Some people play games, some people do online banking, whatever it is. But all of that stuff should ultimately talk to each other, should be interconnected. It should be really easy, right? You want to go to an e-commerce site and have one click and it connects to your bank account and what have you. And all that is really hard because traditionally software has always been built in silos,
Yeah.
and those silos have their own security, their own login systems, everything.
Yeah.
Because we didn't really have a way to do mass, secure exchange of value.
Yeah.
And so lo and behold, blockchain provides that for us. So
Yeah.
now we have the capability of actually, through tokenization, allowing all those systems to talk to each other, because you can have a common decentralized identity standard. You can have a common medium of exchange.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really cost anything for any application to accept payments in digital currency,
Yeah.
to accept your digital ID. And and you don't have to make reference to big centralized databases, and you have concerns about GDPR or data privacy, because it's all built into the system.
Yeah.
So the key superpower of blockchain is not actually that it's so interoperable, it's that it's cheap to run.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
We've never had cheap, secure technology like this before.
Amazing time to be alive. Animoca's built a diverse portfolio from the Sandbox to Quid to TinyTap. What's the connective tissue that ties all these platforms together and allows for interoperability across the ecosystem?
So I think we have a diverse array of portfolio companies and projects that we've incubated internally, and I think the connective tissue is that Web3 philosophy. It's that idea that we really want to grow passionate communities around products and lean into the network effects of connecting those communities together, because we think that opening up the world of interoperability opens a lot of new horizons for those individual companies.
Yeah.
So for example, why would, I'll give you a simple example. If you're a game company, you can spend lots of money advertising to build a user acquisition funnel and onboard lots of users into your game.
Yeah.
If I'm starting a new game or a new, financial services application, wouldn't it be great if I could go to the game company who's already onboarded all those users and say, actually, we could just work together and do a marketing arrangement between the two of us, and why don't you bring your community over to consume my services and try my services?
Yeah.
It's so easy to do in Web3, whereas in Web 2, we actually spend all our money on Google and Facebook and Apple buying the same customers over and over again for each one of our different applications, when
Right.
actually we could be giving that money back to consumers in the form of better products if we didn't spend it all on marketing to get them through the door in the first place.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk about investing in the future. You've invested in over 30 companies and touched everything from collectibles to AI to DeFi. What areas are you most bullish on in the next 12 to 24 months?
So, as you know, in Web3, 24 months is a lifetime. So
Right,
that's
right.
very hard.
Right.
I'd say the next
All right,
12
let's
months.
go to 12.
I'd say the next 12 months. Obviously, you can't not talk about AI because it's been sucking all the oxygen out of the room for 18 months
Yes,
already.
yes.
So I think we have substantial initiatives there. And I think some of the points about AI that are exciting are AI agents.
Yeah.
I think AI agents are going to really help us in terms of assisting the user onboarding process in crypto generally,
Yeah.
because it's much easier for a non-technical user to use a text prompt or a voice input
Yeah.
in order to get what they want done, rather than trying to navigate complexity of signing transactions and opening wallets and stuff that they really don't like. That's too much tinkering under the hood.
Yeah.
We need to come up with the automatic transmission of crypto,
Right.
and not have everybody cranking at the front of their car
Yeah.
anymore.
Yes.
So I think AI agents will help with that particular transition. Another area that we're thinking about a lot is how we can involve AI, what we call AI characters or non-playable characters in games,
Yeah.
to enhance that gameplay activity.
Yeah.
Whether it's the characters that play against you or socialize and interact with you,
Yeah.
or the ones that, for example, play to assist you.
Yeah.
So, for example, when you're playing a farming simulation game, one of the things about it is, you're farming all the time, and you may not want to play the game for 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
But if you have AI agents who are able to complete those tasks on your behalf when you yourself are offline, then they're being helpful to you in completing your missions on the game, and they act as part of the gameplay themselves.
Wow, that is very, very cool. What's your philosophy on backing teams and technologies that will define the next phase of Web3?
So I think we look, number one, for kind of a combination of passion and mission alignment. Because I think the thing about Web3 is not, I mean, yes, the technology is cool, but it's not so much about a change in technology as a change in mindset and a way that we look at the world that is about, it's not about a zero-sum game anymore. So the traditional investing approach of Silicon Valley has been, how can I invest in a company? And one of the first questions they ask you is, okay, so what's your moat? What's your competitive moat?
Right.
And the moat is actually just a posh word for monopoly. How are you going to make this into a monopoly?
Right.
And what a monopoly does is it captures market share to a point where then the consumers are helpless in the face of price increases, right? And yes, that's a great way to extract value, but it's also, subject to regulation, because we've found time after time that monopolies are actually not good for consumer markets and for the efficient functioning of markets. And so our job is to figure out, how do we get people to change their mindset from understanding that actually it's not about the moat, and it's about the idea that you're going to grow the pie, because actually you don't want to put a fence around your customers. You want to bring down all those walls because you're actually letting all the other customers in. You're not preventing your competitors from poaching them. You're giving everybody else access to pay you money and consume your services.
Wow, I love that. So we're going to get into the fun part of the interview now. Lightning round. Quick questions, quick answers. So,
okay.
All right. Token or broken? What's one thing people still get wrong about owning digital assets in games?
That it's inherently bad. I think there's still a lot of prejudice as opposed to people making educated choices.
Love it. Hype space or headspace? What's one thing that has to happen for the metaverse to go mainstream?
I think the metaverse is mainstream. It just depends how you define it, because we're already living in it.
I agree. I made the analogy in your phone, right? Is that I feel like we're mesmerized by our phones, right?
100%. 100%.
I love that answer. We're all going to make it, or wait a minute. What's one overhyped Web3 trend that needs to cool off?
I still think we're all going to make it, to be honest.
I love it. I love it.
I'm not only an optimist, but I actually think that we're all going to make it because Web3 is all about the network effects. And I will put one caveat on that, because I'm also not naive. I think we're all going to make it for quite a while. Maybe 5 years from now, not everybody's going to make it anymore as the industry matures. But for now, we're all going to make it.
I love that. I love that answer. Pixel or protocol? Do you think the future of gaming lies more in gameplay innovation or infrastructure tech?
Gameplay innovation, because what we have is a new medium. And every time there's a new platform or a new medium, the games that are successful are the ones that embrace the new medium, not try to shoehorn the old way of doing stuff into the new platform.
Love that. IP or XP? What's more valuable long term? Owning big IP or enabling user-generated content?
You have to do both, unfortunately. They're not mutually exclusive.
Love that. Chain champion. If you had to build a new project today from scratch, what blockchain would you build on and why?
Okay. I think the only thing you can definitively say is it's not the one that gives you necessarily the one that gives you the biggest grant, although sometimes that's the right choice. I think it's about, you need to find your tribe. So where is there a community of people who you think are like-minded enough, because whatever chain you decide to embark on, that's where you start. So you need to find a critical mass of people who are going to love what you do there. And then once you find them, you can build beyond that and go, because ultimately everybody should be cross-chain, but you need to find your tribe of people first.
Love that. Final question in lightning round. Web 3 or Web 2.5? Are we truly ready for mass adoption, or do we still need to bridge the UX gap?
We need to bridge the UX gap, but I think AI will take care of that. It might be hasty to say this year, but we will see some people show examples, I believe, this year of having done that. I think it'll take another year for it to filter out to everybody else. But I do think that we should be careful not to risk neutering our products to try to simplify them for Web 2 audiences.
Love that. All right, we're going to jump into some highlights from Paris Blockchain Week, because this is now the new Paris Blockchain Week podcast. Never been done before. Is this your first Paris Blockchain Week, or?
It's not, actually.
No.
I'm a regular.
A regular? Were you here for the first one that was apparently at Station F, or no?
Okay, so I missed that one.
All right,
but I've been ever since.
You've been ever since? Wow, yeah. I mean, it's an amazing backdrop. So, general impressions. What's been your most surprising or inspiring moment at Paris Blockchain Week this year?
So, my most surprising thing is going to be a compliment to the organizers.
Wow. Love it.
I had a panel yesterday at 4 o'clock, and it started on time.
Love it.
Any conference that still keeps its schedule on time by the end of the day is doing something right.
Yeah, they need to give that note to the Oscars in America. That thing is always like, that thing's like 2 hours over, and I'm sure there's a bunch of award shows in London that have the same issue.
Exactly.
Key takeaways. What's one insider conversation you've had this week that builders should be paying attention to?
So I think that one of my favorite things about coming to events like this is you really actually get a real feel for what's going on in the industry and what people are doing that you can't quite do online, right? You can spend all day long on Twitter and you still don't necessarily get a feel, and it's hard to say. This is just like it's almost like the body language of what's going on in the industry. And that happens, I think, both here at Paris Blockchain Week in the main event, but also in the side events. And I think that one of the key things about Paris Blockchain Week that I enjoy is that such a diverse array of builders comes to Paris this week, and you get to meet people from all aspects of Web3, whether they are, people doing art, people doing games, people doing financial services, doesn't matter. They just all love blockchain.
I love that. And emerging trends. What's the most exciting trend or signal you're seeing post Paris Blockchain Week that gets you fired up?
So my favorite trend of the moment, I think it continues to be people building on Telegram. I love Telegram as a platform, and I think that it has a lot of potential for us to build really cool stuff at scale of larger audiences, because it's a distribution platform that really embraces Web3.
I love that. I love that. So, some closing thoughts. A quick summary of the opportunities you see at the intersection of gaming, digital and property rights, and Web3 for everyone.
Quick summary. Honestly, I think this is just about one of the things that I've come to see recently, and it's kind of confirmed here at Paris Blockchain Week. I think we're starting to really see what success looks like in Web3 gaming. And success looks a lot more like, I'll pick a traditional game, like a EVE Online, for example, where it's a game that is populated by a highly passionate audience that is very engaged, spends lots of money, so the average revenue per user is very high, but the overall audience is smaller. So you're talking about now, because blockchain can monetize at such high rates and have relatively low cost, it means that successful games are going to be built for passionate audiences in the millions, not audiences in the hundreds of millions where some of them are passionate and most of them are just there hanging around and trying something and then move on.
Yeah, I love that. And what makes this moment in blockchain so powerful, and how will Animoca help shape the next generation of internet users, creators, and communities?
So I think this moment is powerful because we're at an inflection point. We're at an inflection point where we now have enough critical mass in the industry that if you are new to the industry and you want to build something, there are tool sets there, there's infrastructure there, there's everything you need so that you don't need to be a blockchain engineer to build a product using blockchain anymore, which was the case 3 or 4 years ago. And we're also at a point where I think the political winds, literally and figuratively, have started to shift, where countries around the world, notably the US, but let's not forget about Europe and Asian jurisdictions, etc., are all starting to, if not embrace Web3, at least really make an effort to understand it more because they see the value that Web3 is providing their businesses, their communities, etc., so that we're going to be much more, I think, embraced by traditional industry.
I love that. And what are the best ways for people to learn about all the amazing things you're doing at Animoca, and as well as you? What's the best way to follow you and engage you?
I'm going to be really boring, and
All
I'm
right.
going to say try the website as a start
Okay.
at animocabrands.com.
Yes.
And of course, the home of Web3, which tends to be Twitter
Okay.
or X.
Yeah.
And so come and follow us there, because I think for all the latest information, follow us, follow me, etc., and you'll get to see what's new.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the Paris Blockchain Week podcast. Hopefully you can do this again soon. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Thanks.